what I realize now is our self-judgments become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you judge that you're stupid, well, what do you see in your life? Everything that shows you you're stupid.
Right.
Because our point of view creates our reality. Reality doesn't create our point of view. It's a point of view that we take that creates what shows up. So here I was 30 years old and I had experienced abuse. I had experienced people hating me just because I was alive. And I'm a seeker. I was going to weekend workshops. I was reading books. I was doing my tools. I was doing all my meditations and I was like, like if somebody said, do this, I would do it. And what was I looking for? I was looking for happiness. Oof, that was a tough time, Either my life changes or I'm out of here. And I went to my little calendar where I wrote down all my appointments and everything. And I put a big X and a square around it. And I was like, if my life doesn't change, I am out of here.
Lluvia de luz sobre mi cuerpo, una energía multicolor me está llamando. Lluvia de luz me va encendiendo y en el silencio el dolor se va apagando. El pasado ya no importa.
Seguramente sabes que tú puedes llegar a ser feliz, pero te encuentras constantemente luchando para lograr hacerlo. Nuestro invitado de hoy nos invita a explorar un enfoque completamente diferente, uno que puede llevarnos a reconocer y aprovechar nuestras habilidades y sabiduría para abrazar nuestra verdadera grandeza. Dain Heer es autor, conferencista y facilitador de conciencia y de cambio. Durante más de 20 años, ha invitado a personas de todas las culturas, países, edades y estratos sociales a abrazar su verdadera grandeza. Es co-creador de Access Consciousness, junto con su fundador Gary Douglas, y también es conocido por su proceso único de transformación energética llamado The Energetic Synthesis of Being. Autor de múltiples libros sobre relaciones, conciencia, dinero y ser tú mismo. Su obra más destacada es Being You, Changing the World. Hoy, Dain nos comparte un conjunto único de herramientas y procesos energéticos para liberarnos de conclusiones y juicios que nos mantienen atrapados en un ciclo sin elección ni cambio. Bienvenido a Caminos con Luz, María Zetina, Dain Heer. En este mundo tan ajetreado en el que vivimos, encontrar herramientas que nos ayuden a seguir, pues encontrando o creando una mejor versión de nosotros mismos es indispensable. Es por ello que se desarrolla Access Consciousness, que es una serie de técnicas, de pasos, de herramientas, tanto muy prácticas como también dinámicas, que nos ofrecen un proceso que te permite tomar la decisión para facilitar tu día a día, para ser más consciente en la vida diaria y así poder eliminar las barreras que se van creando a lo largo de los años. Bueno, pues esta práctica ya se encuentra en 188 países y ha impactado a millones de personas. Y tenemos la suerte de que uno de los co-creadores, Dain Heer, esté aquí con nosotros en la Ciudad de México para enseñarnos, pues, de qué va esto que son las barras de Access. Y pues bienvenido a la Ciudad de México. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It is a pleasure.
It is a pleasure to have you and to start knowing you a little bit more. I know that you are a rock star around the world.
Aw, thank you.
But this is kind of new in Mexico, okay? So I want our community to know a little bit more about you. So where were you born? How was your path, looking for this amazing tool that you are practicing today? But obviously you are a seeker of consciousness and well-being and balance and just being a better human being. So can you tell us a little bit about your path?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And as you mentioned, I'm a seeker. Like I think a lot of us are. And for me, the seekers are people who have a sense that something different should be possible, and they're looking for how to create it. Well, me also. When I grew up, I grew up in a lot of poverty. I experienced a lot of abuse. And yet, even in the middle of being abused, I was like, it doesn't have to be this way. Here I was, a 6-year-old being beaten with belts. And I was like, it doesn't have to be this way. Why don't people understand this? And partially, I think, as a result of the abuse and the judgment I had experienced and all kinds of other things as we do growing up, I grew up knowing there should be possibilities, but in such a huge amount of judgment of myself for everything I was trying to create. And I didn't seem to be very successful at it. I did well in school. I ended up, and I grew up in Southern California, and I spent the early years of my life living in the ghetto in Southern California with my mom, single mom. And then later we moved to different places. I moved around a lot. And so I finally settled when I got into high school. And after high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I ended up going to chiropractic school several years later after college. And I did it because I knew people who were creating miracles. Like somebody would go to their chiropractor and this person would transform their world. And I'm like, I want to do that.
Which way, doing TBM or?
It was TBM, it was AK, it was NET, anything with an acronym, and also these people were amazing healers. And the tools they were using allowed them to express that ability to contribute to people. And that's what I wanted. So I went to chiropractic school. I learned all these techniques. I learned TBM, I learned AK, I learned NET. I learned about 10 or 12 other things. I also started a spiritual search at that time. And I was so excited to get out there in the world and contribute to people. And so I opened my practice and I started having people, and I'm not creating the result that I wanted to. And
how come?
I wish I had an answer for that. I think maybe the universe had other plans.
Okay.
Because a lot of times the thing that we think is the wrongness of us, if we look from a different perspective, it's what's required to get us on the right path, if you will, or the path that will actually work for us. And in my case, that's definitely the case. And because no logical reason makes sense. But in my mind at the time it's because I'm an idiot. It's because I'm the only person who can't do this. I know all these amazing healers. They're my friends. I love working with them. I love having sessions from them, but I can't seem to do this for people. I couldn't even muscle test correctly. So, I'm like the redheaded stepchild of every technique I try to do. So I walk around and what I realize now is our self-judgments become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you judge that you're stupid, well, what do you see in your life? Everything that shows you you're stupid.
Right.
Because our point of view creates our reality.
Right.
Reality doesn't create our point of view. It's a point of view that we take that creates what shows up. Now I know it. Now I have ways of changing it, which I'm really grateful for. So here I was 30 years old, and I had experienced abuse. I had experienced people hating me just because I was alive. I had experienced all of these things, right? But I'd never given up hope. But here I was in my chiropractic practice with a girlfriend who I thought was the perfect relationship for me. And I was waking up unhappy for the better part of 3 years. And I'm a seeker. I was going to weekend workshops. I was reading books. I was doing my tools. I was doing all my meditations, and I was like,
Yeah.
Like if somebody said, do this, I would do it. Because I knew there had to be something different. And I still remember after a weekend workshop, because what would happen is I would go to the weekend, and by the end of the weekend, I'd be like, yay, I have it. And what was I looking for? I was looking for happiness. That's all I really wanted. I just wanted to be happy. I just wanted to wake up and like being alive, because I knew it should be possible. And I had it sometimes, but then it would disappear, like slip out of my hands. And I remember a couple days after a weekend workshop, I woke up and I'd been happy for a couple of days. And then on Wednesday, it's always hump day. I don't know what the heck that is. Friggin' Wednesday. Here we are again, On a friggin' Wednesday, I wake up and all of the happiness is gone. All of the depression I'd been experiencing, all of the insecurity, because that was such a big thing for me. I don't know how other people are wired, but for me, I had such a strong sense of insecurity. And, I look back on those times, I'm like, that was a tough time, And I got to this place where I woke up that day and I looked around my little apartment where my girlfriend was, and I just was in this space, and I drove to my office and I'm like, universe, I'm done. Okay. Either my life changes or I'm out of here. And I went to my little calendar where I wrote down all my appointments and everything. And I put a big X and a square around it. And I was like, if my life doesn't change, I am out of here. And a week later, I saw this ad for Access Consciousness in the little paper, and it was tiny. Like, I'm probably the only person in the universe that saw that ad. Okay. And it said, Access, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. Now, you would think I'd be like, yay. I was like, I hate you. My life is pain, suffering, and gory. And I was so angry, I threw the paper away. Well, a week later, I saw the same little tiny ad. I couldn't even see now the way my eyes are, you know? And it said, Access, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. And I wanted to go into that anger and resistance. And instead I went, okay. Because I'd learned if you hate something, if you love it or hate it, there's something there for you. You just don't know what it is yet. So I called the lady who put an ad in the paper, and I'm like, okay, what do you do? And it was like talking to a happy marshmallow. It was so cool. Here I was like,
Yeah.
I hate you. And she's like, I love you anyway. You know, it was basically the energy. And she said, well, we have all kinds of tools to change whatever you want to change. I'm like, look, I have been through tools. You know, I have got thousands of tools, and none of them work long term. And she said, maybe a good place to start would be with this thing called the bars. She said, it's 32 points on the head, and it's just a light touch. All you do is lie down, and I'll just put my hands on your head lightly in different places. And all you have to do is lie there and receive. And I was like, okay, what do I get out of that? She said, well, at the worst, you feel like you had a good massage. So you get some relaxation in space.
Oh.
And she said, at the best, your whole life can change. So I made an appointment. I had her come to my chiropractic office. And I lay down on my table, which I hate because it's my table. At that point, I hated everything in my life that I had created. I lay down on my table. She puts her hands on my head, and she had such a kind touch. And I was like, oh my God, it's nice just to have somebody with kindness touching me. I didn't realize I wasn't having that in my relationship, you know? And here I was. And after a few minutes, I felt this energy, just like a sweet sort of wave. And I was like, oh, this is so nice. Wow. And it wasn't a significance. It was just, this is really nice. Mm-hmm. And I felt my body start to relax for the first time in a long time. Mm-hmm. Well, I get relaxed, and then a few minutes later, there's this wave of joy. And I started laughing like a little kid. I was like,
Right away.
Right away.
No way.
And I just laughed for the next hour while she kept doing this session. I got up from the session that I had gone into depressed and suicidal with no sense of hope. It was the first time. See, I was 30 years old. It was the first time, no matter what I had experienced on that Wednesday, it was the first time in my life I had given up hope. And to have this session, the hope was back. Not only that, I was like, if it feels this way to be alive, I'm in. Oh. Not only that, I was like, oh my God, this is the way I've always wanted people to be able to feel. This is why I wanted to go be a chiropractor, so I could create this feeling in people's worlds, this sense that everything is possible. And now I get to.
Oh, what a beautiful story. Wow, Dain, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
And you know what? Everybody that is listening can relate, okay? Because no human life is easy.
True story.
Right? And everybody is a seeker, even if they don't know it. Because everybody wants that joy, that happiness. They try things, they try relationships, they try just being adequate for everybody to love them. Yeah. They try, I'm talking about human beings. It's not like they and I haven't done that or been there, right? But I guess we're so ashamed of who we are, or maybe our past and our story, which sometimes, most of the time, is suffering.
Yeah.
But I am so with you about knowing that we can create our reality and we can go beyond our story. And
Exactly
I guess
that.
in a couple of words, that's access consciousness. So we access the truth of what is
Exactly
in
that.
this huge divine intelligence,
That.
right? So what I want to talk about now is us human beings are also very, we don't believe in magical things, right? We think that the hard way is the only way. So when you talk about just touching some points on your head, and that's going to make life better, it's like we're skeptic about it, right? We're like, wait, no, he's probably having something
Totally.
else.
Well, me too. I had the same point of view.
Right.
I was like, are you kidding? Okay, let's try it. What do I have to lose? If it doesn't work, I'm out of here.
Yes.
You know? So
Yeah.
I absolutely.
Yeah, you also
I was the same way.
walked in access consciousness also with some guard. Or,
Yeah,
no?
absolutely. So I totally understand that. And, you know, it's funny that I'm out there saying, hey, this is possible, you know, because I know what it's like to not believe it is. And after having tried so many things, but what if it is possible? What do you have to lose for trying just to see? And also it's like, not everybody is going to have the result that I had. You'll have your own result because you're your own person.
What you need.
Yeah. You'll get whatever you do. And for some people, they'll be like, that didn't do anything. And it's like, cool, well, thanks for trying it. You know, it's interesting because as kids, we have this willingness to try anything and explore.
Yes.
And as we grow up, it's like we only want to do what we've decided are the right things or the perfect things. And I must choose perfectly. And that's such a space of judgment of us and everything we choose. We lose the adventure of being alive, you know?
Yeah.
We lose the joy of trying new things, even if they don't work out. I mean, the funny part is, if you try something new, it's like you come alive again.
Yes.
Even if it doesn't work out, you're like, well, that sucked, but at least I
tried
did it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm more alive today for having chosen to do it, you know?
When you were talking about chiropractic and all that career that you studied, something like clicked in my head, and it's one of those many techniques that you talked about. One is TBM. So the first sessions that I took my girls to TBM, it's total body modification, which if you see the chiropractor practice this on you, it's also very magical, right? But in a way it's not, because how he explained it to me was, okay, you are like a computer, okay? You are a software or a computer, and something kind of is not flowing in your perfect system. So if we touch some points in your nervous system or whatever, we're gonna unblock it, and you're gonna start feeling better.
Yeah.
And so in our story of human beings, we've seen many practices like that, just by the touch of some points, maybe tapping, or also acupuncture.
Yeah.
How do you call it?
Acupressure. And
Acupressure.
acupuncture, both, you know, they have,
Yeah, and
Exactly.
Reiki, which is more like an energy, you're a channel, no, from the divine, or many, many, many practices like that. So maybe access consciousness is sort of like that also, right?
Yeah,
But it's only it's only like touching some points in your head.
yeah. Well, that's the bars. And then we have all kinds of other things. The bars is an amazing place to start, though. And it's a great thing to talk about because we've done studies. We found it decreases anxiety, stress, and depression, an average of 87% with one session. Which you hear that and you're like, did I hear that right? You know, I might as well say, I just ate a car. You know, you're like, what? Did you, what?
Sí.
But we've also done brainwave studies.
Where you can see the
Yeah, where they actually study the brainwaves of people who are getting bars. And the only reason we actually did that study, because we haven't been interested in proving it because We know it works, and people seem to be drawn to it based on trying something different. So we haven't put a lot of time into proving it, though we have done some studies. But we had a neuroscientist who, we were at a conference that he was speaking at, and somebody said, hey, you should try while somebody's getting their bars on. He's like, yeah, whatever. So he did, because a friend of his suggested that he did, and he took all the data and didn't crunch it. And he was going to present the next morning. He's like, well, let me find out what's here. So he got up at 5 a.m. to see what the stats showed. And immediately after downloading it to his computer and seeing what his brainwave study showed, he called his entire team. He said, you need to get over here right now. This does in 1 hour what 25 years of meditation does to your brainwaves. And I went, now the person that was running the bars was not me. It was not Gary, the founder of Access Consciousness. It was a person who learned to run bars by taking a bars class. A person off the street, basically, who learned to run bars. And that for me is an acknowledgement of what this really is. It's that each of us has within us so much more than we know.
Mm-hmm. I've been going to places lately to work on my brain. Okay, I've been doing neurofeedback, right? So I got my brain mapped first. That was like the first session, to see how my particular brain and how I work in life, how I react, what's up with my fears, how's my anxiety or my repetitive thoughts. And all that we can see, and you know it, because the brain, it shows like in colors, right?
Yeah.
Like the red part of our brain, maybe it's very stressed out and the waves are like moving very, very fast. And we're talking about alpha and beta and theta, all these waves. And so the promise here was, when they saw my brain, it was, I mean, I was in shock, because they described me as if they had given birth to me.
Right.
It's like, what? I mean, they told me that I had TDA, ¿cómo se dice en inglés? TDA, TDA? ADHD, okay. I had that and dyslexia, and they talked about like my fears and how they could see how I've been working in my fears with meditation and all this. And I was just like, it was an X-ray of me, but emotionally also, right? So what the result is, I've been doing these sessions for like my 9th session was yesterday. Okay, I've been feeling way better, but this is like science to me, because they put some electrodes and they put a screen, and the screen comes on and off, and I'm listening to some noises. And what they are explaining to me is that I'm building new ways, new highways in my brain, so I can react in a more subtle way. And I don't need to have all this fear all the time when nothing's coming to attack me. Yeah. So I'm practicing this, and now I meet you. And you're telling me that that is science, and they see my brain and they give me some explanations, and then they tell me that it takes time. It took time to build all these fears. So it took time to whatever happened in my brain, 51 years. And then what's up with this access consciousness, with these bars, that I'm not gonna spend all my money and I'm gonna be not healed, but I can see like my new self in many ways, a better version of myself, practicing these bars.
Yeah.
How can that be if we're talking about physiology in my brain, that you can see that? So how can something go so fast? Why? Exactly. Is it energetic? How can we explain it?
I have no clue.
Really?
Do you know how the internal combustion engine works on your car?
No, but I guess a mechanic can explain that to me.
Right. But do you like driving?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't have to know why. You just know the kind of car you like, and so you get it and go. Same thing. It's like, here's my sense of, there's a lot of things that we experience in our day-to-day life, and science would like to put itself out as having a lot of the answers or all of the answers or most of the answers. But science, here's my sense, is in the future, science will be able to explain it. But if you look back in the day when the earth was flat, you were a heretic if you said the earth revolved around the sun.
Right.
That's the way it works out. Yeah. You know, because the idea was we are the center of the universe. The sun revolves around us. If you say anything else, well, now you're crazy. You're a heretic. You don't
Ignorant.
fit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I, by the way, I totally get it. I mean, I am the same way. I'm not somebody who goes, yeah, let me just, yeah, you know, like I want proof usually. Well, I got the proof when somebody put their hands on my head. That was all the proof I needed. And here's the other thing is so it's interesting because what you're talking about with the neurofeedback, I think it's brilliant. I'm so grateful it's available. And here's the thing, we allow ourselves there's this weird thing that we do where we don't want to be taken advantage of again. But the thing is, people are trying to take advantage of us all the time if we look from that place where they want our money for this. They're trying to say, oh, this will solve all your problems. This will fix this. I'm not saying this will solve anything. Mm-hmm. I'm saying here's a choice and a possibility. But when we go at it from a scientific perspective, we're like, oh, science says this. But are you aware that for pharmaceutical drugs, if it works on 9% of people, they call it a success? I'm sorry, that's science. And not knocking pharmaceuticals. If you need them, you need them. You know what I mean? I'm a firm believer in do whatever works for you. But the beauty of you being able to go and hear sounds, flashing lights, have them map your brain and talk to you from the place of the biochemistry and the neurology of it, explaining all of these things. You're like, oh, it makes sense finally. Exactly. Because what happens is, my sense, you know, there's been a debate forever. Is it nature or nurture that creates us? Is it our biology and our physiology, or is it our psychology? Well, of course it's both. You can't separate them. So what happens is you'll see these patterns and you'll be able to relate them to people. Like one of the things we talk about in Access is the people with ADD, ADHD, OCD, and autism are actually the mutation of the species to a higher order of functioning, like the X-Men. And they're judged just like the X-Men. And yet, if instead, and one of the big things about Access, and one of the things I always want to do with people is give them tools. Because even when I had the desire to change, the willingness to change, I didn't have tools that worked in the trenches of life to be able to change things in the moment. And one of the greatest things that we can do is two things. Number one, be interesting point of view about all of our points of view, because it gets us out of judgment and allows us to, instead of judge right or wrong, we realize it's a point of view I'm choosing or somebody else is choosing. But the next element that is vital is going to question instead of always trying to come to conclusion about everything, because our conclusion requires judgment. And so in a case like with people who have ADHD, like I have elements of ADHD, OCD, autism. But if we look for what is the gift in this, what is the capacity in this? What's the miracle of this difference? Now, just that for a moment can take people aback because they're so used to it being not only judged, but now let's put it in a box. Now let's give you a drug to try to eliminate it. I'm like, oh man, and I work with so many people who are on so many medications for their ADD, their ADHD, their OCD. And I understand it because you want to somehow be normal, you want to be a normal functioning person. But what if, in a lot of these things at least, is an invitation to function beyond the box of what you thought you had to do as normal in a way that you uniquely can, that is miraculous. Mm. So ADHD is, what I found is people who have ADHD have the ability to hold multiple realities and multiple concepts in their awareness simultaneously. And here's what I found is, because I work with almost everybody I work with has some element of that, diagnosed or not. many of them diagnosed. And instead of me going at it from, hey, you're wrong, here's how to be more normal, I say, hey, what if you're not wrong? What if this is a miraculous capacity? How do we use it for you in the world? And, you know, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I know I'm not the only one, you know? And this is, and also a lot of people who do anything alternative, you know, go against the establishment or go against what people are doing, whether it's biofeedback or pharmaceuticals or doctors. I don't. Consciousness, we have a definition of consciousness and access. Consciousness includes everything and judges nothing. And for a certain person, going and doing, you know, the pharmaceuticals is what they need to do. Do it. Do what's going to work, but also don't eliminate something because it doesn't fit into the box. It's like somebody coming to you and saying, hey, I think the earth is not flat. I think we actually revolve around the sun. And you go, that's not what I've been told. You know what I mean? It's like there are certain things, and how do we get there, or how do we explore this? Well, there's one thing that is another really helpful awareness tool, if you will, which is what's true for each of us makes us lighter. It makes us feel lighter. A lie makes us feel heavier. So if somebody says, hey, you know, you've got all this stuff going on, why don't you try biofeedback? And you get this sense of, like it just kind of lands in your world where you're like, oh, that feels nice. Then try it. Or if somebody says, hey, why don't you try bars? And it lands in your world, you're like, then try it. If somebody says, do biofeedback, you're like, well, maybe don't try it. See, we all have an internal compass, but what we've been taught is to trade our internal compass in favor of a compass of this reality's judgments about what's right and wrong and good and bad. And that we're supposed to somehow, from the time we're little kids, we're taught that we're supposed to somehow figure out everything that's right and good and only choose that, and eliminate everything that's wrong and bad and never choose that. But if you look at it, little kids don't judge. Babies don't judge. Little kids don't judge. It's something they start to learn from us. This is one of the greatest unkindnesses that we heap on everyone's shoulders, and we all do it. There's not one of us that is free of it. One of the things that Access gifts is tools for getting out of judgment of us and everyone else. And that's one of the things that the bars do, is they short circuit the electromagnetic component of judgment. How? Not exactly sure, but my sense is, 5, 10, 20 years from now, science is going to be like, we found how it's done. And we'll be like, cool. But I'm not willing to slow down because science hasn't proven it yet. It's everything that has truly been a difference in the world, whether it was psychology. Look at when psychology came in. Even up into 20 years ago, if you went to a psychologist, people are like, oh, even now, people going and getting some assistance with the mental stuff still has a bit of a stigma. And it had a lot more 20 years ago or 30 and 50 years ago. It's like, you're going to a witch doctor. What, like crazy? Why? Because the majority of the population hadn't caught up yet. So I'm willing to be weird. And the original meaning of weird was of spirit, fate, or destiny. And so when people tell you you're weird, tell them thank you. But for me, it's like, there's so many people who initially think that my job is to prove that this works. That's not my job at all. My job is to go, here's a green M&M. Would you like one? If you don't like M&Ms, good for you. Go have something else. Mm-hmm. Go have a piece of celery. I don't care. And this is where the not judgment comes in.
Right.
Because each of us actually knows. And if we would allow ourselves the freedom to follow that knowing, even if it doesn't match the bases of other people's realities, and even if it doesn't match everything that we've been brought up to believe we must choose. Like I have a really good friend, my best friend growing up, he became a dentist. He has hated every single moment in the dental office. Why did he become a dentist? Not the motorcycle racer he wanted to be that he was actually really good at, because his parents required it of him. And his parents had a lot of money, and they said, unless you become a dentist, we're cutting you off. And we can all relate to how that might be. You know, you have the security of this thing that, okay, you have this security of, if you do this, you'll be secure. And I know how it is, wanting that security, and I totally get it. And I don't begrudge anybody who makes that choice. No judgment here. And simultaneously, you are secure, but are you happy? And we live in a world in which it's so interesting, because most people at this point don't even actually value being happy. They would sort of like it as sort of a thing, like if that could happen, like if my life showed up perfectly and I could have that, cool. But we've gotten over actively seeking happiness. What an interesting thing, because if you look at it, if we had a world, and it sounds so almost childlike when I say it, you know, because people are like, well, you can't just be happy. I'm like, actually you can. I'm living proof, and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that I worked with are living proof that you actually can. And not only can you, but guess what? When you are, your life shows up better. In other words, and this is really weird, in other words, when you're happier, money shows up with more ease. The people you surround yourself with are more contributory. They like you more. Because when you're unhappy, you find people who are at the same level of unhappiness. Because we vibrate, you know, we vibrate like tuning forks together. And so the money will show up with ease. What you'd actually like to do, you can see it now because you're actually desiring happiness. It's so interesting. If we lived in a world of happy people, would we have the world of separation and war and hatred and people being mean, thinking that's their power? Our meanness, our meanness is not our power.
I know.
Our kindness, our contribution, our joy, that's our greatness. You know, our gentleness with each other, our willingness to say, oh, I see you're having a terrible day. Come here, let me give you a hug. And let it all out.
I know.
We can be so much greater. And that's not a separation from our lives. That is actually being included in our lives. That's actually living instead of having a life.
Yeah. Definitely. I connect with that. I feel you. I see you.
Thank you.
I work not in the access consciousness or the bars, but in these kind of conversations, you know, like letting people know that there's much more than what we are living.
Yeah.
And that is, we can go back and feel like we used to feel in our best days when we were young, when we were little, when we were amazed of the flower and the dog and the monkey and the sky and the clouds and we were friendly and we just wanted to laugh.
Yeah.
And just without questioning or judging. And then all this heritage from our parents, society, religion, culture. You are Mexican, you are Jewish, you are white, you are black, you are wah, wah, wah. So they, in a way, we become slaves. We become slaves of all that conditioning. And now our job as older or more mature is to get away from all that shit and reconnect.
Yeah.
And we have little time because life just goes by very, very fast. And moms, or if we have kids, we have the responsibility to find out the happiest way back home so we can encourage them to also be as authentic and unique as they were born to be, and that we deformed that. Yeah. So we can say, I am so sorry I deformed you. Now you have a big homework to do.
Right.
And you have to start working on yourself. But if we as parents understand that as fast as possible, then we can ease the way for them, for our kids.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's all I have to say about that.
Well, I am, what a beautiful conversation. And you know, when you said you're not doing access consciousness, or no, we each contribute the way we do, and you bringing so many of these things to light for people to choose. See, I don't care if anybody does access. I just want them to choose the path of happiness for them.
Exactly.
And we're all different. You know, we each require, you know, a little bit of this, maybe a lot of this, maybe a little bit of this. You know, and that's the gift of it.
Yeah.
That difference that we bring.
Yeah, it's like, in a way, it's like nobody's a teacher of nobody. I mean, real spiritual teachers, they just show it's a reflection of who you really are without so many lies.
Yeah.
So they reflect in a mirror of their consciousness who you really are, but you haven't remembered that yet. And I guess that I'm like just like putting out the tools, because there are many, so everybody can say, okay, I'm responsible for my unit and my unique life, and how am I going to make that better? Because it's not a responsibility for you, but also for all the people that are around you to make their life better, not impossible.
Absolutely.
Because people make life impossible for others.
Absolutely.
And we can see that in the political world and in all those like systems.
Yeah.
Okay, so if people are listening, I mean, I know they are, but they're curious about las barras de access consciousness, where do we start looking for that? I mean, how can we have a session on ourselves? Who's practicing that here in Mexico? Is it hard to get? I mean, do we have to fly to Europe or to you, or what's up with that? I mean, to get that tool for us.
I love the idea of flying to Europe to get it. It sounds so so spectacular. You know, it's like,
and for not for many.
I know, exactly. Oh no, there are many practitioners here in Mexico.
Really?
Yeah, a lot. And you can go to bars.accessconsciousness.com, or we'll have a better website available that we can post, I hope, because I'm the worst person to ask about where to find these.
Okay.
And we also have a lot of social media, you know, that's in Spanish that people can connect with. But basically, all you got to do is what I would do is use this wonderful idea of, ooh, that seems fun, where you can go there, you can get a list of people, you can search by country and then city and all that stuff. And then you get a list of people and just be like, that one, you know, like just play, like eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And each person sets the rate that they charge for doing the bars, and find someone that feels light for you, that where you kind of just feel like, oh, okay, this one, you know that knowing that we all have. Yeah.
I have another question. Is it like something you do once, twice, and then you don't have to do it again? Or is it like a practice, like a meditation that, I mean, you can feel better when you meditate every day, but if you stop doing it, maybe the feeling stays in you because you're more present, right? But it takes practice to be mindful in your daily life. So my question is it something you have to practice forever to feel that result in you?
Well, so a couple of things. One is, you know, I kind of liken it to working out. You know, if you go to the gym once, that was awesome, but
you cannot go down the stairs the next day.
You can't go down the stairs the next day. And if you only do it once, you know, you'll get something. But in actual, but this is different. It's more similar to the meditation example, I would say. But here's the weird part is, I've had people who've come and done one bar session, and that's all they've ever done, and their entire life is different. I've had some people who come for a bar session like, wow, that is so different, and then they keep doing more, and their life keeps getting more different. I would say the more you do, the more difference is available, the more access to a space of living that is a lot more like a happy kid with a nice bank account, I guess I would say, you know, like where it's like we're happy and we also have a sense of being able to create what we would like. So, but along with everything else, like everybody, each person is so different. So I would say for me, I love to get bars once a week if I can. That's a thing that works for me really well. And for a lot of people, once a week, once every couple of weeks seems to work. Some people once a month, some people once every several months, and they're good. So it's kind of like finding your own groove. And even though one session can change a whole lot of stuff, it's up to each of us. And I don't know what the determining factors are in that.
Okay.
You know?
And returning to the practice of meditation, when you're new to it, it's like, oh my God, I need somebody to guide me.
Yeah.
Right? And then you get the hint out of it, and then you start doing it by yourself, and then you don't even need music. You just need the silence.
Yeah.
So can you practice these bars on yourself?
Absolutely.
You can.
Bars is not like in a meditation in that way at all. You receive a session, and so here's the thing. You can learn to run bars. We have a 1-day bars class. We wanted to make this as accessible to everybody as possible. So we have a 1-day bars class. During that class, you gift it twice, you receive it twice. You get shown where all the points are. So you're good enough to actually do it and practice it. And after that, you can go practice it on people, contribute this to your family, but also you can do your own. It's one of these things. One of the things that occurs with bars is it's one of the few places in our lives where all we have to do is receive. And so one of the things that opens up with bars is actual receiving, because the more you practice receiving, or the more you choose it, the more you're in the presence of it, the more it becomes a viable part of your world. Because most of us don't receive very often. We're trying to control everything. We're trying to go faster. We're trying to go harder. As if I go faster and harder and control more, then I'll have more and I'll be more and I'll be the person I always wanted. And this is like, receive, you beautiful creature. And so in the receiving, there's that. You can learn to do it if you want to do it in a day, and then practice it until you're good. And then you can go do it on people. But also you can do it on yourself, which is really wonderful. One of the things I do, because I facilitate classes around the world a lot. So I've got a lot of people that I'm interacting with a lot. And I have the joyful experience of when people come to me, especially their first time, it's like, I have all of these problems. I have gathered all of my problems for you. Dr. Dain, solve my problems. And you have 500 people in a room who are like, we have brought our problems for you. I know you talk possibilities, but until we get through all of these, I don't think it's possible, And so the initial start of it is like, help, because I care so much about these people. I want them to go beyond the problem, right? Of course. And so one of the things I'll do is I'll run my own bars, and there's one right behind the ears, and you just kind of put your hands like this. You just kind of go. You go like right behind your ear like this, and you go over a ridge, and then there'll be a little indentation there. And if people know, what's that? If they know anatomy, it's right around the mastoid. And you can just hold them there like this. And so a lot of times I'll just lie down in bed before a class, be like this for 15 or 20 minutes. And I'll be like, okay, I can do this. Let's go,
And that empowers you.
Yeah, what it does is
to hold the space.
Yeah.
The next day for your students.
Yeah. And it de-stresses, and it actually gives you a sense of space. So and it also, here's the interesting part, is it gives you the awareness that you get to be the space. It's because that idea of holding space is like, you can hold it or you can not hold it, you can drop it, but if you be it, it's always available to you. And so this, like with so many other of the things, because we have over 8,000 tools in Access, which people go, what? Don't worry, you don't need them all.
You don't have to memorize them today.
Yeah, you don't memorize them ever, actually, because they'll change by tomorrow, like a lot of them, because we're always continuously looking for how do we gift people more of them more quickly? How do we gift them the awareness they have choice? How do we gift them the awareness that the space that they're looking for is within them and is them? And so but it gives you the awareness that you actually are this. And then it's something that you can choose anytime. And it's part of that idea of everything exists and nothing is judged. You know, one of the, like, of course, as you would imagine, it's like I did a lot of spiritual techniques and tools and a lot of spiritual searching. And one of the things that became apparent to me with the people that I was learning it from is they were judging, there was a sense of possibilities, and then they were judging this is good and this is bad. They were judging colors. Like, these are right colors. Do not wear black. I wore black to a thing because I really liked the shirt one time, and this lady went, and I was like, what did I do? And I was like, what did I do? And she told a lady that I can't trust him because he's wearing black. And I was like, I thought we were here
to be free.
To be free.
Right.
And so here's the thing is a lot of us in our attempts to be free there's something that will have this beautiful promise and beautiful possibility. And then there'll be attached to it this structure that we feel duty bound to uphold, and we end up judging ourselves. And so this is about getting out of judgment of all of it. Mm-hmm. Everything is included.
So just like 2 minutes before we say goodbye, how...
I don't want to say goodbye.
I know. You started out the conversation talking about how you suffered and struggled in your childhood and how you were beat up and that. So how did you manage to go beyond your story? And maybe those feelings that a lot of human beings keep inside, which is anger and resentment and all that. How can you go beyond that and give another lecture so you can be this open and heartful human being?
I think first we need to acknowledge that the possibility exists. And I think what that takes is people like you that are here saying, hey, there are different possibilities. So we've got to recognize it's possible. If there are other people choosing it, so can we. You know, and to any degree that I can be an invitation for people to that, that's why I'm here. Let you know that, you know, you can change your stars. And I also have to say, I had a lot of happy moments during my childhood also. You know, it wasn't just constant abuse. There was just a lot of abuse too. So I want to point that out also, because I had some really wonderful people that I grew up with also. Mm-hmm. And I think actually that was part of what let me know that it's not all this. And if it is, then maybe I have a different choice available. And I think that's where we've got to get to, mm-hmm. is the awareness of no matter what it has been, no matter what lens we're looking through, we have a different choice. And then to ask the question, what's it going to take to change this? And even if you think that question is having no effect, you asking that question one time can start your life on a different course, because a question always empowers and opens up a different doorway of possibility. A conclusion or a judgment always gives us only the conclusion or the judgment that we've come up with, which is where most of us have been sitting most of our lives. And so something like, what else is possible? What's it going to take to change this? What would it take to change this with ease? And there's a mantra, we call it a mantra in Access, which is all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. And if you don't know where else to start, ask these questions and then do that 10 times in the morning, 10 times in the evening. Or if you're like me, when I got it, I did it all day long, mm-hmm. you know, with everything that occurred. And the idea behind this is all of life, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I don't have to avoid it anymore because it all comes with ease and joy and exuberant expression and abundance. And it's a beginning. And if any of what I've shared today has inspired you or invited you, please check it out. You know, you can check me out. Check me out. That was a weird. Hey, come and check me out. How you doing? Oh, sorry. You know, and it's like I alone have probably over 1,000 videos online that are just my desire to contribute to people. You know, you can follow me on Insta and all the places, as we all know by now. But, and for me, how I changed it, the sense of truly something different being possible occurred for me when I had the bars. And once again, I don't promise that for anybody else. At the worst, you'll feel like you had a good massage. At the best, your whole life can change. And that is still true 25 years after my first bar session. But for me, because there's something I don't know if I can describe, but there is, have you ever had an experience that was so different you couldn't put it into words and didn't match your previous reality, even though it might have shed light on some parts of it that you're just like, okay, this changes my whole perspective on everything. It was one of those for me. And once again, I'm not saying everybody gets that, but maybe a little bit, who knows?
Yeah.
And if it's not Access and it's not bars and it's not me and it's not these tools.
There are many.
There's so many.
Yeah.
Find what works for you.
Right.
In that, you find you. And here's the other thing is be willing to do it. And be, like for me, I friggin' paid for chiropractic school on student loans and it was not cheap. You know, I was paying that stuff off for years. And as soon as I found Access, a couple months after I started really getting the sense I could do it, I'm like, goodbye chiropractic. It has been fun. Actually, it hasn't been as much fun as I hoped, but I am on a new adventure.
Right.
And I never looked back.
Right.
Be willing to realize that's not an invalidation of your previous choice.
Right.
And that's one of the other elements we got to get is we think if we don't honor our suffering by continuing to suffer, then we're invalidating the suffering. That's some stuff. And one of the things we have in Access is the ability to really quickly change your point of view. All like the point of view of, oh, this is this, or it's limited. We have this thing called a clearing statement. The short form of it is POC and POD, POC and POD. It stands for going back to the point of creation of the thoughts, feelings, and emotions right before you decided something, even if that was when you were a little kid and don't cognitively remember. It's accessing the consciousness of you.
So you repeat POC and POD?
Yeah. You know how, and there's a whole thing, it's actually right and wrong, good and bad, POC and POD, all 9, shorts, boys, povets, basies, and beyonds. I just said that to blow people's minds out there who are like, I already didn't understand you. And I'm like, that's okay, it gets better, trust me. There's many levels of not understanding me, trust me, as my mom told me. Anyway, I digress. And so you can use POC and POD. You know how people do cancel clear? Or they'll know they just chose something and they can feel it coming into their world and they're like, oh! POC and POD. Also, anything you've chosen from the past, POC and POD. And just try it. The worst that can happen, it takes a nanosecond to do, but it's based on the idea, like the room we're in, the walls look solid, right? But science tells us it's 99.99999% space. It's energy arranged in this way that we can only see the wall. Well, what if it's the same thing with the walls in our life? And so this thing I use every day with every session, every time I'm working on myself ever. And it's started to allow me and others to get to the bases, the basis of what's underlying the limitations and send them on their way, which gives a lot more space and a lot more ease.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so, so much. Come back to Mexico, please.
I look forward to it.
Gracias. Gracias a ustedes por haber sido testigos de esta preciosa entrevista. Claro que aquí les compartimos en dónde podemos encontrar al doctor y todas sus redes aquí las pueden encontrar para que ustedes también, si esto te resonó, pues sea parte de tu nueva herramienta. Y si crees que a alguien le puede resonar esta entrevista, que por favor compartas. Si no has encendido el botoncito de la campanita, te sugiero que lo hagas para que cada semana te llegue un nuevo capítulo que estrenamos, que te suscribas, así nos ayudas a traer a grandes maestros, como es el caso de Dain Heer, que está aquí en México. Y pues gracias por continuar creando y ayudándome a crear esta comunidad que cada día somos más y más y más, caminando juntos hacia un camino más consciente. Gracias. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sí.